Hello and welcome to another episode of Ashley Haden's Political Breakdown, a show where we talk about the comings and goings of the week's news. My guest this week is Carmen Ali. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how is it going with yourself?
Yeah, okay. It's a bit hot today. I've had to put the fan on, so hopefully that won't disrupt the recording at all.
I reckon that should be absolutely fine. So have you been keeping up with the week's news this week?
A little bit. I did see that, I think Matt Hancock travelled to see his parents when he had coronavirus, and everyone's talking about that at the moment.
Oh, we're going to start with that story. It's slightly different to how you've said it, because it's Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings, allegedly.
I get them confused. Which one's Matt Hancock?
Matt Hancock is the Secretary for Health. He's the health secretary, the one who he owned his own app that he made when he was culture secretary.
Okay, but he's the one who had coronavirus initially and then gave it to everyone else.
No, Boris Johnson had coronavirus, probably from going around and shaking hands with everyone. That will certainly do it. And then there was a wonderful video of when we all Boris Johnson had coronavirus and had to self-isolate. There was a wonderful video of Dominic Cummings coming out of number 10 and running away.
Oh.
Turns out he ran 250 miles up to Durham, which is one hell of a fucking run when you're ill. Now, there's been, as you say, there's been a lot of talk thus far, today and yesterday, with whether or not Dominic Cummings should resign. Because he has broken guidance lockdown rules. Yeah. What's your views on that? Do you think he should resign?
So, did he end up having coronavirus?
Yes. Because he got it from his wife, they think. Because his wife had it, and then he had it. And whilst they were supposedly still ill, they drove 250 miles to to his parents' house so that they could look after the children whilst the parents were ill.
I don't know. I think this is going to sound quite controversial, but I'm not sure. I feel like obviously there are probably lots of people doing things like that, but we don't know about it. So there might be lots of people who are both. The mum and dad are ill, they can't look after their kids properly, and then they're obviously asking relatives to help or whatever, but because they're not deputy prime minister or whatever he is, apparently I've just found out.
He's the chief advisor. He's the chief advisor to Boris Johnson.
Not following his own advice. Then, I don't know, I think he should probably come out and say this probably wasn't the best idea. Although having said that, I don't know, did his kids have coronavirus too? What are you supposed to do if you both get sick and your kids need looking after and you don't want them to get sick? I don't have kids, so I didn't really think about this until just now.
Well, one thing you probably shouldn't do is travel to relatives that you love who are old, because the coronavirus affects the old more than anyone else. And what has
he said about it so far?
Oh, he said fuck all.
Okay, interesting.
What's been interesting with
people were going to find out, did he?
Well, the government have refused to answer any questions on where Dominic Cummings was self-isolating for the past 7 weeks. This all happened around March. So the government have been going, no, we're not answering any of these questions. They brought out a statement today when the story came out, because it was a work between Guardian and the Mirror because the Durham police spoke to Cummings about breaking the guidance rules, and they backed him. Of course, they supported him. The problem is that did you ever see the story a week or so ago about Neil Ferguson?
Oh, the one who was having an affair and then he got sacked.
Yes, or he resigned.
Oh, he resigned.
He resigned because he broke lockdown rules, and the media found out, went after him, and he went, I did wrong, I should resign. Now, why should he have to resign? And on this, government MPs and politicians and right-wing think knobheads were all saying he should resign. This is a disgrace. This is disgusting. He should know better. He should resign. What's the difference between what he did and what Cummings is doing now? Where's
I mean, at least the first guy got laid.
Exactly. There's a reason. There's fun in that. You can understand why someone would do that.
I don't necessarily think all of them should resign, but mainly because I don't think you should resign for making one mistake. I think we have this culture at the moment where if you do anything wrong, people are like, you should resign, you should lose your job. And like Donald Trump has done loads of things wrong, but he still gets to keep his job. Why is that okay for him?
I don't think comparing anyone to Donald Trump is a good way of measuring our own morality. And I would disagree with you in the sense that we may have a cancel culture, but the cancel culture does fuck all. Our politicians have made so many mistakes over the past few years, lied so much, that none of them, even when they've been found out, have resigned off of it. I'd say we go, especially with politicians, we've gone the other way completely, to where everyone's made of Teflon at this point. You chuck all the shit on them, and it's just dripping off them. Nothing can touch these people. And so we need to get to a point where they're going, right, you've gone too far now. Where is the line where these people will actually...
I think the thing with that is that then they should have resigned much earlier. So Tory politicians should have resigned with the Windrush scandal. They decided that, you know, lower paid workers are called low skilled. Like this coronavirus thing, I feel like is just a small drop in a bigger ocean. Like parents at risk, but actually Tory policies have been putting thousands of people at risk for years. Like I just found out that it was only in 2015 that they introduced
surcharge.
Even if you're paying tax in the UK, if you're working in the UK and you're paying tax, you still get on top of that to go to the doctor. That doesn't make any sense. Like, no. I feel like these are the things that people should be held accountable for. Stuff that's in their personal lives that obviously does kind of correlate with some sort of breaking of government policy is a bit more like, what's the word? A bit more grey area, I feel. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying.
It's like the Bill Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing. Like, if we literally made every like politician resign for having an affair, we would have like almost no politicians.
I would take that as a good thing, though. How? Because I mean, if we're going to talk about affairs, and we currently have a prime minister who has the same morals as a fucking penguin. As a penguin.
A penguin. I think penguins have probably got better morals. Penguins are super cute.
Penguins love penguins love a gang rape. It's a little known fact about yes.
Like that.
The animal kingdom isn't nice. For all of the
otters are bad too. I found out what otters did, and I was like, that's really sad.
Exactly. All animals are awful. Stop bringing them into your homes. But if we're going to have politicians who you can't even trust in a relationship, how can you possibly trust them to be honest to the public when they can't be honest with the people who they claim to love?
I think this is a wider issue where it's not just politicians who are untrustworthy, it's a lot of people. And then if you replace those politicians with other people, then you might get more untrustworthy people.
I've always had this thought about politicians, that you shouldn't be allowed to be a politician unless you have at least once taken your own advice.
I mean, that's fair.
Because politicians are there to give advice. I mean, how often have you taken your own advice?
Not as many times as I would like to have done, but I've started taking it a bit more often as I've got to my 30s.
So Dominic Cummings, if we go back to this, you think that it's fine?
I don't think it's fine. I think he should say something about it, but I also...
Well, what he has said about it is that it's fake news. Well, no, he hasn't said it. Anonymous sources have, which is him. It is. I hate to break it to everyone. Every government source, every anonymous government source is him.
It's from them.
It's ridiculous. It pisses me off so much that every time there's a fucking news story, you've always got some knobhead journalist going, a government source has told me that it's wrong. You're not here to fucking be a mouthpiece to the government. Check it then. Check it first. If something's wrong, if just because some prick at the fucking government tells you it's wrong, doesn't mean it is. You know, they shouldn't be the ones who you listen to for truth. They're the ones who are fucking lying. Bastards. Anyway, I'm in quite a fucking mood today.
Am I going to get loads of hate on your podcast from your viewers for me saying this?
No one watches this. I wouldn't worry. I hate to break it to you. This is not going to be your big break.
Damn.
Not at all.
Made up on everything.
I've gone to a question that I've been wanting to ask all week. Which is, what is British common sense?
I mean, that is a difficult question.
We've been hearing this for weeks now about what the rules, British common sense. That's what we need, British common sense. What the fuck is British common sense?
I think it's like, so people were getting really annoyed when they were going to the parks and it was really busy and being like, you shouldn't be in the park, blah, blah, blah. I think the thing is that if you go to the park and it's already really busy, then you should go home. Does that make sense? But it's just not enough people are doing that. So...
I mean, I think I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't complain about the park being busy if you're in the park. If you get to the park and it's like 50% like occupied, but you're still away from people, that's fine. But when more people start to arrive, if you get there and you're like, actually, I wouldn't be able to find a space without getting really close to these people, you should just go home and come back earlier. Or
why is the government using the phrase British common sense as borderline legislation?
Because they don't really understand what they're doing. They don't have common sense.
Do you think that the use of common sense is being used as a way for them to not take responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely.
And go on.
We should have... I think that a lot of us didn't realise how serious it was at the beginning because the government wasn't taking it seriously. I was like, why are we cancelling things? What's going on? Like, I don't understand. And then I think it's because it was such a slow process. And then finally the government was like, oh, we're going to close all pubs, we're going to close all theatres. Whereas if they'd done that at the beginning and said, look, this is really serious. We need to close these things. You need to stay at home unless you absolutely have to work. Then we would have been like, oh, okay, right. This is actually a serious thing. Maybe we need to take notice of it. And then there wouldn't have been as many deaths. And then it wouldn't be going on for as long as it is.
Do you think that it's only Britain as the only country in the world that has common sense?
No, I'm saying like hardly any country.
Oh, no, but this is the thing. I think one of the problems with our constant use of the things like British common sense is a nationalist, borderline xenophobic trait of ours, where we have this belief in we're the exception to the rule. Like Britain, we still walk through. We have a slip upper lip and common sense, unlike every other fucking country in the world.
But New Zealand did lockdown really quickly and they've got hardly any cases.
Yes, New Zealand did incredibly well. South Korea have done incredibly well. Vietnam, although Vietnam lack a lot of human rights, so I'm not sure. Well, this is it. It's what you're willing to give up, and I always come around to the same thing on these shows for the past couple of weeks, is my fear of the freedoms that have already been taken away from us during this pandemic. The government has brought in a lot of statutory instruments to remove freedom of movement, freedom of assembly. It's just, I'm slightly concerned. But us, comparative to, say, Vietnam, who have no real human rights and a dictatorship, I'm not comfortable with using them as an example of how well to run a pandemic.
Yeah, that's why I cited New Zealand.
I know, New Zealand, yeah, New Zealand are fantastic, but like, Vietnam have had no deaths. They've had no deaths at all.
Then maybe they're just not telling us.
Oh, there's always an issue with that, or it's a lot easier to control people when they have absolutely no freedoms.
Yeah.
But New Zealand have done fantastically, and they should be applauded. Do you think that female leaders make better leaders? Is what I've seen this lots on Twitter where everyone going, well, look at all these countries. Do you think they make better leaders?
I wouldn't like to make a generalization like that, because I don't think that's fair. I think that some female leaders are better than male leaders, and some male leaders are better than some female leaders. I think
that's a fantastic answer.
I wouldn't. I know that's not the fashionable feminist thing to say, but I wouldn't want to go around making a sweeping statement like that, especially as we had Theresa May as our example as a female leader.
and Thatcher.
I was going to say Thatcher as well. Yeah.
Jesus. I mean, especially at the moment, it's a very low bar comparing yourself to male leaders at the moment, because they're all shit.
Exactly. I'd make a better female leader than Boris Johnson.
Christ on a bike. If we're going to talk about, you mentioned Trump, we do have a story this week on Trump, and it's not really about anything that he said, because frankly, I don't give a shit. It's about Nancy Pelosi got in trouble this week for saying that Trump was morbidly obese.
Who said
that? Nancy Pelosi. She's the Democrat. She's the head of the House of Representatives for Democrats, and she said she worried because Trump came out and said that he's taking that malaria drug, hydro, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And she was asked about it, and she said that she worried about his health because of his age and the fact that he was morbidly obese taking this drug. And people started saying, this is fat shaming. This is terrible. You cannot call him. Go after his policy, sure, but don't mention the fact that he's a fat cunt. Do you think the calling... not opening thing there. Do you think the calling Donald Trump morbidly obese is fat shaming?
Not really, because if that is factually what he is medically, then, and she was just saying that really he shouldn't be doing that for medical reasons, that's a different thing. She wasn't going
she was taking a dig. She was certainly taking a dig. 100%. There isn't an ounce of me that thinks that she gives a fuck whether he lives or dies.
Right.
But he, according to his medical records, he is obese.
But not morbidly obese.
Not morbidly. No. This is the thing.
I think the fact that she got it wrong is just an outrage.
This is it. See, it always worries me.
I think it's interesting because obviously Donald Trump has said many terrible things about female politics in his time, and I don't think that's okay. So I think it's interesting that if we start saying it's okay for a Democratic politician that we maybe agree with to be insulting someone based on their looks, then we are saying that it's okay for any politician to insult someone else based on their looks. So I think that's a dangerous road to go down, and I think it's very fashionable to be like, oh my god, like Trump's the like orange faced twat. But actually, that's not the problem with him. The problem is that he makes policies that can be very harmful to other people. Does that make sense? I think it's like when you start, it's okay to insult anyone just because you disagree with their politics. It's like then it says it's okay for him to say nasty things about Hillary Clinton's appearance just because he disagrees with her politics. And I understand people might not agree with what I'm saying, but
oh no, the thing is, you're probably right, and you shouldn't go after people's looks. Personally, for me, I'm utterly fine with it because I don't think it's necessarily comparable. I don't think that you can take the piss out of Trump's looks, so you can take the piss out of anyone's looks. No, going in terms of power. If you're really looking to hurt Trump, which at this point the only thing that does is critique of him and not his policies, he doesn't care about people. You can go along and you can say all the time that everything that he does, I'm not sure he can count. I 100% do not think he can count.
But I think saying I don't think he can count is fine. But I think saying he's a fat idiot is not as obviously I might say that to my friends, but saying that publicly is not the same thing. It's not criticizing someone in a helpful way.
How about if it's medically correct? Because we have a thing like fat shaming is terrible. It's awful. But obese is obese. It is a medical term. It's like saying, it's like going around going, you don't say someone has cancer anymore. You just say that their body doesn't want to live as long.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying with that. And like I said, I'm not saying she should be sacked because, like I said earlier, I don't think she should be sacked for one mistake. Yeah. But I think you were saying she was taking the piss with it. I guess with all about intention.
She said it. She said it very straight faced, but this woman isn't caring about Trump's health. It would be like me going, I truly hope that Trump doesn't drink bleach. I don't mean it. You know, I'm lying.
Not really a big deal, to be honest. It's not really something that we should be massively concerned with, and I think it should be something that should be forgotten about in like a day. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
All right, we're going to get into a bit more in-depth stories now.
Now there's a break, like a kind of break in the conversation. I'm just going to get some water.
That's absolutely fine. No, yeah, we'll continue. I don't edit anything, so this will just be some silence in the middle. It's absolutely fine. There you go. Delightful. All right.
In the freezer, so it would be nice and cold for me.
It's all fine. It's all fine. Do you know what? I should have said that at the start. I don't edit a thing. So if you're going to say something that's going to get you cancelled, please make sure that everyone can hear it.
I love that.
I really don't want to have to like dub over it. You know?
Totally, yeah. I'll make sure I put it afterwards as well, just in case.
Exactly. Right, so this is the Adam Smith Institute, the Centre for Policy Studies, the Institute of Economic Affairs, and Policy Exchange, which are all right-wing think tanks, all for the free market and all of that jazz, have endorsed the public spending increases to confront the coronavirus outbreak and state-funded investments to boost the recovery. Now, what's interesting about this is a number of these think tanks were for austerity.
Okay.
They really liked austerity. They thought that was the best thing for the 2008 crash. Now, with all of these people now turning around and saying that what we need is more spending in the economy, which is something I agree with. I think always spending and investing is always the best way to grow an economy, and cutting everything will only hurt. Does this suggest and they're not going to admit it, but does this suggest that the past 10 years of austerity have been wrong and were only put in place for ideological reasons and not for the good of the country?
I think it's interesting that when a national crisis happens, that means that many more people are affected, including like a lot of middle class people, that suddenly the government can provide funds to people who need it. Suddenly they can increase the universal credit amount. We can get a self-employment grant, although it's not perfect and there should be more help in place. Suddenly they can pay companies to furlough people, but before that, you know, if you weren't doing a full job search every week, then you didn't deserve your money. Like, you know, if you can walk 10 steps but you're actually really disabled, you should still be getting a job. Like, I think it's interesting that suddenly there is all this money and all these resources now, that more people are being affected by it.
Do you think and I've asked this to previous guests, it's always an interesting question. Do you think that there's going to be a fundamental change when this is all done in society? Do you think this is giving more empathy to humanity?
I don't know. That's a really hard question. And I think that the government has been forced to appear to give more of a shit and to help people out more because so many people have been affected that they've had to step in. But I wonder whether it will continue. So,
I mean, I suppose it matters whether or not you actually have hope for society as to whether or not it is going to change. I do not personally feel that with the people that we have in power, it is going to. And I hope that we do not go to austerity again, because if we do go to austerity again, there's nothing left to cut. We're literally going to have to start cutting people in half. It's the only thing that we've got left to cut.
I read something the other day that said it's weird that people complain that you know, that sometimes welfare pays more than work. This means that we should increase wages, not cut welfare. Like, that doesn't make any sense, which is something that I don't really agree with.
With universal credit, we've found a lot of people, especially single mothers, have been affected for this furlough, have actually lost money going on to universal credit from quite a significant amount. You're looking at like £125 a month worse off than they were before because of the new rules that have come in, and there's a benefit limit.
Do you mean that they had part-time jobs, have been furloughed from those part-time jobs and are claiming universal credit alongside that?
No, because they were on one of the stories was a woman with children was on universal credit, and because the benefits that came in, there's a benefit cap, meaning if you earn this amount of money, then we can take more from you. For like universal credit loans that people get, because of course universal credit, you don't get it until 5 weeks, which is madness anyway, and so you have to take a loan, which everyone's like, oh, it's only you to take the loan, but you have to pay that loan back, meaning you've got less money, which means you're struggling. It's like a constant shit show. And next room some more shit, next room some more shit, an awful show to go to. But because they were given more money from because universal credit went up, and so they were given more money, but because of the other benefits they got, they hit the benefits limit, and they ended up taking more money from them via the loan repayments, which actually meant that they were getting £125 a month less. And this is fucking ridiculous.
I mean, that just doesn't make sense. That is not British common sense, is it?
I think that is British common sense. That is the pure fucking love of everything that we've been doing for the past 10 years, which is, we're going to cut this, but we're going to take much more from this. Give with one hand, take from the other, and this hand's fucking like the big foam hand. You can get more from it. God, we're a shit country. I love England and I love Britain. I'm a big fan, just not the people in it. That's my big problem. Let's go on to, this is an interesting one. This is according to public reports seen by Open Democracy. Ukraine has blacklisted more than 700 Scottish, English, Welsh, and Northern Irish firms. Now, this is offshore firms that are usually set up as shell companies to hide ownership, avoid tax, make illicit payments, be corrupt as fuck, basically. Transparency International has said that it is a stark reminder of the British role as global hub for financial crime. These are things like Scottish limited partnerships or limited liability partnerships that are able to be set up in the UK, in Britain as a whole, and as a shell company to pump fucking money through. London is the money laundering capital of the world. Now, at this time, we've got a lot of stuff going on with coronavirus and everything else. Tons of stuff going. And so I understand why people would not necessarily think that this is an important story. But it is important that when we get out of this, we're not 20 steps back from where we were. So we need to continue moving forward to stop these money laundering that's going on that can always lead to things like modern slavery and corruption around the fucking world. Now, it's going to be a nigh on impossible question to answer.
Okay.
But how would you look at going forward to stop shell companies being set up in this country to launder money around the world?
I literally don't know enough about finance or money laundering to answer that.
I told you it was going to. I understand that it was a difficult question. I'm fully aware of that. But it was a story that I had. We had to cover it.
Okay.
Transparency would be my answer. Because one of the major problems with any form of limited partnership, SLPs, everything else, is that a shell company can help create them. And so they do not need to know who runs it and who runs it at the very end. That's what's important. Because you can have Tom, Dick and Nobber as the front line. Oh yeah, I own it, but it's a shell company, shell company, shell company. You can have 16 shell companies underneath and not know who owns anything. So okay. Transparency would be the way of going through. Personally, for me, that's what I would look at. Although what we have been seeing is, because with the Scottish, what you've got is a high prestige. If you've got a company in the UK, Scotland or England, that's high prestige with low transparency. And so you're able to set up a company saying, well, no, I've got a British company, which makes it look legitimate when you're putting through all of your ill-gotten gains. I think we've covered enough of the I can see you.
Sort out like.
I can see you. I told you it's political breakdown. It's all about the politics of the week. They're not all going to be fun, enjoyable, isn't Trump fat conversations. You know. Do you have any news stories that you've brought along that you saw this week? I'll take that as a no. I said you didn't have to, so do not worry about that at all. I did say you didn't have to.
I didn't do the optional homework.
Right. A story over in Egypt. This is according to the Human Rights Watch. The Egyptian authorities have been holding hundreds, if not thousands, of people in pre-trial detention without the pretense of judicial review. They're using the COVID-19 pandemic to effectively preclude detention hearings. Now, this is seeing around a lot of the world with dictatorships using COVID-19 as a way of taking more and more power for themselves?
Mm.
Once again, going to be a difficult question. But do you think that just people knowing about it is enough for things to change? Or do you think that there's going to be more?
I think that with things like that, you know, like the UN need to step in and be like, you can't just keep people in prison for an unlimited amount of time with no reason. Like, we have Zoom. You can do trials over Zoom. Like, you can do reviews over Zoom. It's not the like 1800s anymore. There
was a story the other week of over in Nigeria. They did a Zoom court hearing where they gave the death penalty.
I saw one in Singapore as well, which was ridiculous because it was for drugs. It wasn't even for like murder or rape or anything. It was a drug crime.
Are you for or against the death penalty? Or we're on a different subject?
I would say against, mostly because there've been lots of instances where you can get it wrong. Just because somebody has killed someone else doesn't mean that you have the right to kill them. It means that there is no rehabilitation for that person. It assumes that they can never be saved or changed or anything like that. I think it's just lots of different reasons, and yeah, I would say I don't agree with it.
Yeah, that's good. It's all fine. It's all fine.
I especially don't agree with it for that. I know, you know, some countries like Singapore do it for drugs crimes, which I don't think that should be a life sentence or a death penalty sentence. I think that's ridiculous.
No, we have a very weird. The entire world has weird things on drugs. What do you think about the war on drugs? Do you think that's a useful thing for everyone's time?
No, I think drugs should be legal. They should be taxed and legal. I think a lot of problems with drug crime would diminish greatly if that was to happen. It's like alcohol, you know. Okay, some people occasionally sell illegal alcohol, but it's not a massive problem because you can buy alcohol in a shop safely when you want to have a drink. Like, if you could go to the shop and buy some drugs and you know what's in the drugs and you've paid for them, you should just be allowed to do that.
And more money into the government, which would be...
Like alcohol, I don't think alcohol should be banned. I love drinking. It's one of my favourite things to do. Love a glass of wine. But it is very dangerous, and we let people do that. We let people drink themselves to death because we let people take responsibility for that. If you want to give people freedom and independence, then you can give people access to things. If they then take an overdose, that's kind of down to them. We're not going to ban alcohol because sometimes people drink too much and die.
Well, then, I mean, if we take your view a step further, then should there be should you be allowed to drink and drive?
No, but I think that's different. I think, like, I understand, oh yeah, if you've had like 1 unit or 2 units, whatever, that I'm not saying we should change the current law, but I think if we're going to make these things legal, then yes, of course, you wouldn't necessarily take a gram of cocaine and then go to drive or go to like perform a heart operation the same way that you wouldn't do that with alcohol currently. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you think as long as it doesn't affect other people, then it should be fine?
Yeah, of course, because it's your choice what you do to your own body.
That little thing actually goes on to another piece of news. Okay. I'm going to fit it all together. Do not worry, it's going to be wonderful. It is the Christian Concern. If I just find so many fucking stories here. Christian Concern. So a faith group have lost a court case it brought against the Department of Health and Social Care over its decision to allow women to have early medical abortions at home following a phone or video consultation. Now, the case centred on a decision by the government in March to allow women to take both drugs needed for an early medical abortion at home under previous laws only the second could be taken at home, with the first taken at a hospital or a clinic following an appointment with a doctor. Thoughts?
I mean,
Happy with a change of rule?
Abortion is legal in the UK. If we have to change it to comply with coronavirus rulings, such as doing video consultations or phone consultations, I don't see why that's any different from going to your doctor and saying, I would like to have this abortion, your doctor giving you the pill, and then you going home and taking the other pill. If you're over Zoom and you say, I'd really like to have this abortion, and you talk it through, and the doctor's like, yeah, that's fine, and then you pick up the pill and you take it yourself, and they give you, you know, appropriate instructions for aftercare, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to administer it yourself at home.
Why do you think the Christian concern have concern?
I think anything that makes it easier for women to get abortions when they need them is something that some religious fanatics are concerned about.
Do you think they're right to?
No, because I think abortion should be safe and legal and available. I think even if you don't agree with it, you should agree that no matter what, people will get abortions. So even if you don't agree that people should be getting abortions, you should understand that it should be made safe for people to do it, because they'll do it anyway.
The same with drugs.
Same, exactly. Like, I think it's really difficult to let your own personal beliefs on things interfere with what you think other people should be doing.
I mean, that's a very valid point, that we shouldn't always allow our personal opinions to affect the lives of others, which is something that religious people and religion as a whole love to do. One of their favourite games, I assume this, because they're so complete as individuals, they want to go and complete someone else's fucking life for them. It's, as an aside, religion, should it be banned?
I don't think religion should be banned, because I think saying religion should be banned is just as bad as saying abortion should be banned. Like, people should be free to believe what they want to, but I don't think that people should use religion as a justification for laws that impact people who are not religious.
But there you go. If laws are being put in place for religious reasons, if wars are being done for religious reasons, if religion is affecting other people's lives, then does not your own argument about, say, drink driving, does that not come into play, where you shouldn't have things that are legal that are affecting other people's lives?
I think that fanatic people will use anything to justify their beliefs. I think there are plenty of religious people who don't do this kind of thing, who don't protest outside abortion clinics, who don't start wars, who just, they believe what they personally believe, and that's their faith. So I don't think banning religion will ban extreme people and extreme laws.
Oh, valid.
And I also think that you can't put all religions in the same box.
I could. Just need a big enough box.
For example, like, you know, there are certain types of Buddhism that are very peaceful, non-violent, that sort of thing. I don't necessarily agree with everything they believe in, because, you know, apparently women can't be the Dalai Lama, which I think is ridiculous. But I think that there are certain religions who have shown to cause more wars and cause more violence than others. So I don't think you can.
For me, I would say all religions, all spiritual people, anyone who believes in karma, anyone who has ever done anything like Reiki or anything like that, psychics, conspiracy theorists who believe that 5G gives you cancer.
I mean,
anyone who's onto their yin and yang. I've got a big list. I'll put them all into the same box.
I've got a yin yang tattoo. I'll tell you why though. I got a yin yang tattoo because my dad was really obsessed with yin yang, so I got it after he died. But they made a fuck up, so they made the circle not the right size. So the white circle is too small because they didn't allow for it to bleed out. But then I was like, kind of makes sense because he was a shit dad. So obviously my tattoo that I got for him would be shit too.
I mean, I think that's the first personal story I've ever had on this. Right. The UN.
And being a religious fanatic are slightly different things, and I do think there is a lot of bullshit in spirituality, such as psychics, etc. However, I think things like yoga, meditation can be really, really good for your mental health, and I would definitely say that shouldn't be banned. It shouldn't be put in the same box again.
Being spiritual is like being religious without a home. It's homeless religion. That's all it is. You don't go to a house on a Sunday and pray in there. You just do it in a fucking park or with nature or some shit. Whiny bastards. Let's go on to the UN. The UN has released a reminder of a list of gender-neutral words to replace commonly used expressions in the English language, saying that it will help prevent a particular sex, sexual gender, or gender identity from being discriminated against. And so instead of mankind, humankind, so the chairman, chair, congressman, legislator, businessman, representative, landlord, owner. You can't say, well, you shouldn't say boyfriend and girlfriend anymore. It's partner, husband or wife, is spouse, things like this. Do you think this is moving forward in the right way, or is this, as Twitter would say, it's PC gone mad?
I think that when these terms were first invented, most of the people using them were men. Most business people were businessmen. Yes. Most chairmen were men. So I think updating those terms makes complete sense, because I think it means that when you see someone in a certain role, or you find out someone is in a certain role, you don't automatically assume that is going to be a man, which can only be a good thing. I think in terms of other language, such as boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, you should be allowed to refer to your partner however you want to. We should not be ruling out these terms, because I do tend to call my boyfriend my partner a lot of the time, but I sometimes call him my boyfriend. And if I want to call him my boyfriend, I should be allowed to do that if he identifies as male. Does that make sense? So I think in terms of professional job titles, I understand why we need to make them more gender neutral. But in terms of personal relationships, I don't think we necessarily need to do that.
Well, it's important to point out that these are suggestions, and because everyone's going to go, this is PC gone bad, they're banning words. No one's banning words. They're saying, like, as an attempt to not offend particular people.
Form, it's totally fine to say, to write partner or to write spouse, because that just includes everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I think you should be allowed to talk about your partner at work without having to use gender neutral language if you don't want to. For example, is how I would.
I think that's absolutely fine. We're going to go back to COVID-19 now.
Okay, great.
such a fun time had by all. This is the outsourcing company Scirocco has apologized for accidentally sharing an email address of almost 300 contact tracers. Now, this goes for another story with regard. Do you know contact tracers?
So is that the first person who had coronavirus in that area?
No, contact tracers are the ones who find out about someone who has coronavirus and gets all the information from them of who they've been in contact with.
Right.
Calls up the people they've been in contact with
to say,
okay.
The AHPB clinic where you get them to call your exes and be like, can you come in for a check?
Yeah, but telling them to self-isolate instead.
Okay. Right, so they leaked so who was Scirocco again? They're like
Scirocco,
a government.
They're an outsourcing.
Yeah.
So a private firm that has been given contracts that, frankly, it is not equipped to deal with. As with a lot of private
I mean,
companies.
it's not the first time the government's done this. They used to, when they started outsourcing the health assessments to, I don't know who they sent it to, but it was just ridiculous. Like, it should be doctors who are filling in those health assessments, not random people. But that's another issue. So they leaked people's email addresses.
Oh, no, not leaked. It's an accidental. They sent an email where they accidentally sent it to everyone and everything, and they fucked up quite royally. And potentially they've broken data protection laws. They're not going to get done for it, of course, but it goes on from another story, which is about the contact tracers. Recruits have described the program to train thousands of contact tracers to help control the spread of the coronavirus as shambolic and inadequate. Now, these people whose job it is to contact the exposed to COVID-19, so they've been self-isolating, they spend days trying to log into the online system, and the virtual training sessions left them unclear as to what their actual roles were. They were told to rely on a 2-page script and a list of frequently asked questions. And this is beautiful. This next bit just it warms my soul. And when asking for guidance on how to speak with someone whose loved one had died of the coronavirus, they were told to look at YouTube for videos on the topic.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's really bad. I feel like all that stuff is worse than accidentally leaking a few email addresses. Who hasn't, replied all when they meant to blind CC? Like, we've all been there. Obviously, I think people should be careful when doing things like that. And, like, we do need to be, thinking about that when we're emailing people, if you're emailing lots of people at once. But I think the fact that they haven't received proper training is outrageous. And I think if you're going to be speaking to people whose family members have died, it takes 5 minutes to be like, this is what you should probably say to them. Like,
common sense, isn't it? Just British common sense.
It is. The thing is, I used to work in a welfare to work company, and we worked for the government, and I had people, on the phone whose family had died or whatever, and you had to just be really, just be a human. Like, you will have spoken to people in your life who've told you that someone's died. All you have to be is like, I'm really sorry to hear that. Like, obviously, this is a really difficult time for you, but we need to talk about this thing or whatever. Like, just use your common sense. It's annoying, but I don't
think you should be using YouTube to get anything. You should not use YouTube to get anything that resembles fucking empathy or sympathy. Yeah. YouTube is not the fucking place.
It's like when my dad died, I had to speak to loads of companies, and some of them were really like, the people on the end of the phone, I mean, they obviously felt awkward and didn't know what to say. So they ended up saying something that sounded really disingenuous, which was really fucking annoying. But like, I think that's a wider issue where people don't understand how to talk about death, and they feel awkward asking any questions about it or even mentioning it. And actually that makes it more awkward when you don't acknowledge it. You can be like, how are you feeling about this? Do you want to talk about it? Like, have you spoken to a therapist about this or Samaritans or anything? Like, you could just be like, look, here's a grief counsellor number I can pass on to you, like a charity or something, like as protocol. Do you know what I mean? If you don't know how to speak to someone about it, then there should be somewhere that you can direct someone to where they can speak to someone who knows more about it.
Yeah, this all goes on from the continuation that we keep on allowing private outsourced companies who were originally like a building firm are now going to be in charge of trying to cope with people's mortality. And you can't fucking allow it. It's the same that's happened with schools, hospitals, prisons. We just get any fucking knobhead who's friends with us to give them the contract, and they end up. It's madness. Outsourcing is such a terrible fucking thing. Right, final question.
Okay.
Coming towards the end. Conservative MP Damien Collins has said that it should be made illegal for conspiracy theorists to spread disinformation online. This is coming after the continuous bullshit of things like 5G giving you cancer. You can cure coronavirus with the sun, and all of this stuff. Should conspiracy theorists be able to continue to spread bollocks online? Or instead of just making it illegal, should social media companies be forced to just cancel it, just delete all the lies that are spread?
I think that's really dangerous because, so for example, there might be a really extreme conspiracy theory that somebody writes online, like the royal family are lizards or whatever. But then there might be something that's a bit more common sense, like some sort of underground goings on in a government or something like that. And that might have some truth to it, but we don't know the full story. But if you start to ban all conspiracy theories, then you start to ban any sort of questioning of the news and the governments.
I think he was just looking at banning the people who are, and I get what you're saying.
I know what you mean, but I think if you ban people from expressing their opinions, which might be completely ridiculous, they might not have any common sense to it or make sense at all, then where do you draw the line?
When it becomes dangerous to people, that's, for me, that's it. It's the same as shouting fire in a theatre. That is illegal to do. Like you can personally believe that gravity is bollocks. You can believe that the only reason that we do not float away is because we blink. You could think whatever the fuck you like, but if you start spreading this about, putting in fake science and say, well, no, actually, science says that gravity isn't real, getting a lot of people who are idiots who to fucking believe you to climb up to the top of a tall building and all fuck off thinking they can fly, that is where the danger comes in.
I don't know. I think that's a really difficult question because I think that how do we monitor that? How do we distinguish between something that is parody and that's something that is fake news and something that is conspiracy?
That's a very interesting point.
That's my issue with it, is that you might write an article that says, oh, gravity's not real, here's a science thing, and it might just be a joke. And obviously people can't be trusted to work out what is a joke or not a lot of the time. But I think once you start deleting certain things from social media just because, you know, they might not be accurate, then you have to delete so many news stories that aren't accurate. Does that mean we can't do April Fools anymore? Like, I don't know. I just think people need to be a bit less idiotic.
I mean, yeah, education is always useful. I do think that banning misinformation during a pandemic is a useful thing. So saying like until this pandemic is over, you can't, unless it's scientifically backed, you can't start spreading shit. Because the problem is you'll have someone like Trump, and you'd have to delete a lot of what he says because everything he says isn't backed by science. But it'd be fun to watch that. I think that would be an interesting thing to watch. Just seeing him, every one of his tweets getting deleted before he fucking gets anywhere. I think that'd be delightful. Well, I think this has been lots of fun. Do you have anything to? Actually. Do you have anything to plug?
So I work at an online virtual strip club called Cybertees, which is every 2 weeks. So if you follow @Cybertees_ on Twitter.
I'll put all the links below the video. You just send it over to me and I'll put them all below the video.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @CA_AF_, and then my Burlesque Instagram is @April_Fiasco.
Fantastic. I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop the recording now. We'll have a quick chat after that, and then we're done. Thank you very much.
Cheers.